Friday, the 14th of October. This article from Silver Doctors, written by Willie. Red flag could be telling us the reset is here, by Willie, the golden jackass. World trade has fallen for the second quarter in a row. The decade of stagnation of industrial production in the United States, Japan, and the European Union could be blamed on financial engineering, housing bubbles, war, and recently on destructive monetary policy in quantitative easing bond purchase programs. It is not stimulus, but rather a destroyer of capital. The West contains several nations with heavy industrial emphasis, hardly advanced economies anymore. They risk a fall into the third world from a generation of outsourcing, asset bubbles, and financial fraud as soon as the new currency regime is installed as part of the financial reset. The CPB, Netherlands Bureau for Economic Policy Analysis, a division of the Ministry of Economic Affairs, just released its preliminary data of its Merchandise World Trade Monitor. Trade volumes rose 0.7% in June subsequently, after falling 0.5% in May. Trade was flat year over year, but below the volumes of December 2014. On a quarterly basis, world trade fell 0.8%, contracting for the second quarter in a row. Without a doubt, the global economy is stuck in a powerful recession. No positive constructive remedies or proper reform policy have been put in place since the Lehman failure. Exactly none. To be sure, none have ever been attempted. Worse, the CPB recently adjusted its world trade data downward, going back several years. The newly updated data depicts a post-financial crisis recovery of global trade, which is considerably weaker than their original data had indicated. These downward adjustments of 2 to 3% came in a climate of stalled economic growth, according to the IMF. Much of the Western national data is rubbish, forced positive by the common neocon fascist dictum. The chart of the CPB's World Trade Monitor Index shows the old data released as of July 2015 in the blue line and the newly adjusted data released in the red line. Observe how the horrendous 4.4% downward adjustment from the peak in the global trade volumes in the original data for December 2014 and in the current data for June 2016. They confirm a broad-based global recession of about 1%, in full contradiction of the nonsensical, constant Orwellian propaganda of sluggish recovery, spouted routinely in the drumbeat of mainstream news. World trade is a direct reflection of only the goods-producing economy. Services are not shipped around the world. An airline flight of a group of consultants is not considered world trade any more than tourism. Finished products, raw materials, and intermediate goods like car parts for assembly are shipped regularly. So industrial production, excluding construction, is key. The trend is terrible for advanced economics. Global industrial production, excluding construction, rose 0.6% in June after a 0.3% decline in May. The index for industrial production in advanced economics rose to 102.5, below where it had been in January at 103.4, a level reached after the financial crisis in December 2012. The industrial output remains below from the glory days before the financial crisis, when the index peaked at 107.8 in February 2008. The global economic recession is as painfully evident as it is denied. The current level for the index has returned almost exactly to where it was in April 2006, right before the Lehman failure and ensuing crisis. The world has endured a full decade of stagnation without any remote attempt of remedy or reform, while the bank syndicate remains in power. Remove rose-coloured glasses. Combine the abandoned austerity budget initiative from the US government with the ongoing big bank welfare known as QE. The perceived insolvent big banks in dire need of liquidation, the expanding welfare state, the sprinkle on Arab human garbage, and stir with a maintained constant war. Thus, no economic recovery, just talk of such. The gripping recession has occurred in the United States, Japan, and the Eurozone. A few other so-called industrialized, advanced economies have exceeded their pre-financial crisis levels. Industrial production has shifted to emerging economies, capitalizing on their cheap labor for many years, such as China. Decades ago, the vast array of companies in the US and eventually in Europe and Japan began outsourcing production to emerging economies in foreign lands. Hence, industrial production in emerging economies has surged over this period. This was particularly the case after the financial crisis, when companies in the US, Europe, Japan redoubled their efforts to get production relocated offshore using easy money from the US Fed, which moved the cost of money to near 0%, where it has remained for several years. However, an extreme point of caution. The emerging market US dollar-based debt stands at over $5 to $9 trillion. Depending on the definition of such nations, some estimates are higher. The debt is on a verge of default due to their currency declines and reduced commodity income, including from crude oil. Thanks to Wall Street for the contribution. Hanjin shipping crisis. Hanjin crisis brings new headache to the US-based imports. Trailers stack up, adding to client costs while trailer shortage looms. The idle containers are clogging the entire system. Confusion abounds. As emergency measures are being sought, a drop-off point system for the empties is being considered. Soon, the used containers will become a newly created market for cargo owners. The bankruptcy of South Korea's Hanjin Shipping Company Limited is causing ripple effects for importers bringing goods from Asia factories to the US market. Port facilities are being jammed while a shortage of trailers is created to move ocean shipping containers on US roads and railways. The world's 7th largest container carrier owns the transports of more than 500,000 containers. They are in many cases clogging up ports and truck yards, tying up trailers that cannot be used to handle other cargo. The growing chaos is beginning to worry freight handlers at US ports on the west coast. Witness the first sign of follow-on effects from the failure of Hanjin. The problem stems from Hanjin's shortage of cash, which has stranded $14 billion of cargo owned by companies such as HP Incorporated, Home Shopping Network, and Samsung Electronics. Much of the cargo have been stuck on over 100 ships at sea because cargo handlers, tug operators, and ports are refusing to work with Hanjin unless they are paid up front. They are aware of the risk of not receiving payment. In recent weeks, terminal operators in the California ports of Long Beach and Oakland are not taking back empty containers. Many in the industry doubt Hanjin will pay storage costs, which has led to a growing backlog of empty containers and the trailers they sit on. The containers are stranded. Thousands of Hanjin containers are on trailers kept out of circulation. The uncertainty surrounding Hanjin appears to be pushing truckers to lock in their trailers from the local organization port. Maybe the vast pile-up of containers can be fashioned into sleek condominiums, like in Detroit, like Lego communities. And that's not even a funny comment, because that actually is what's going to happen to a lot of these containers. Simply stated, if a container reads the Hanjin label, there is no place for it to go. One intermediate solution put forth is the creation of a drop-off point for containers after their cargo is dispatched. In Southern California, shipping industry executives are discussing a staging area where truckers could drop off empty containers to free up trailers. Another midterm solution has been proposed. The cargo owners could resort to buying the containers they hold, which would clear up the legal uncertainty around them, thereby enabling the return of chassis. A new niche market is emerging. Global supply chains are paralysed after the world's 7th largest container shipper filed for bankruptcy, with its assets frozen within the system. Eastern Asian megacorporations are not too big to fail, not cuddled and bailed out like in the West. Hyundai Merchant Marine might purchase some of the Hengjing's diverse assets. Shipping rates have been reduced amidst the glut as the global economy is due for a large slam. August the 31st will be marked on the calendars. On that day, the largest casualty finally slammed global trade ports when South Korean's Hangjin Shipping filed for court receivership after losing its bank support credit lines, which left its assets frozen. Ports from China to Spain denied access to its vessels. Hangjin Shipping is South Korea's largest shipping firm and the world's 7th biggest container carrier. It is a truly huge player. It operates some 70 liner and tramper services around the globe, transporting over 100 million tons of cargo annually. Its fleet consists of some 150 container ships and bulk carriers. It commands 4 regional headquarters in the United States, Europe, Asia, and Southeast and West Asia. With nearly 5,000 people on global staffs, they run numerous major ports for their world-class logistics network. Other shipping firms will go bust soon. Even leader Moller Maersk is in deep trouble, now considering a restructure. Hidden problem in the US dollar is payment. The shipping stalemate from Hangjin has suspicious elements and overtones. Perhaps the Asians generally are conspiring to throw a wrench into the Western economy. The strong hint of the US dollar rejection at the ports is a major component in the financial angle. Possibly the initial salvo in the global financial reset. Dire challenges exist to shipping with respect to finance, threatening the global economy. Be sure to know that what follows is speculation, but informed and backed by the last few years of events. The stage is set. During the trade war and the global fiscal response to the QE monetary hyperinflation that undermines the US dollar, the East, led by China, want the reset to be done, but the West delays interminably. The Western bankers and their controlled governments are printing money to cover their failed bonds and finance their huge debt. This cannot stand. The global finance has been turned on its ear. Numerous nation banking systems are insolvent. The expected pull of the plug has been looming for many months. Consider some thoughts by Euroraj, a brilliant analyst on the Jackass team. He wonders if the Asian producers have finally found a lever to pull with shipping and its related payments to interrupt global trade with the West. It has not been only lopsided, but the payments have been in low quantity printed paper and impaired debt. Refer to US Treasury bills, which seem to be a problem, perhaps being rejected at port as payment. Consider the theory by my brilliant colleague with 20 years of bank analyst experience, a savvy fellow who has contributed much to the hat-trick letter since 2013. The Hangjin story sounds very shady from a number of reasons. The total debt involved is only at $5.6 billion. Nobody stops operations in a bankruptcy, since the situation worsens quickly and the creditor demands grow deeper. The banks or specialist funding companies step in quickly with an urgently needed service to provide debtor in possession financing, DIP, funding. Imagine some potential motives at work here. First, perhaps Team Asia wishes to throw a monkey wrench for trade between China and Europe. Note how China and Spain are mentioned in the articles concerning the Hangjin debacle. Second, perhaps a plan is afoot to bring global trade and manufacturing to a halt, so that US Fed can justify QE to infinity in full bloom while the Western economies are severely distracted. The question has come to centre stage. As a result of the bankruptcy process, the global supply chain stands at risk to endure an unexpected failure. The South Korea Oceans Ministry has been in negotiations for Hyundai Merchant Marine to take over some routes. The global implications from the bankruptcy are unknown, since without precedent due to enormous scale. The potential impact on global supply chains remains devastating, with a cascading waterfall effect, whose impact on global economies could be severe as a result of the worldwide logistics chaos. Both economists and corporations around the globe, the affected firms suffering deep impacted and others, will have yet other excuses on which to blame the radical slowdown in profits and economic growth in the third quarter. An official admission of a global recession, along with numerous individual national recessions, might come. Do not expect the US Fed to hike interest rates with the shipping disaster in the background. They are all talk. Pretexts for the United States Treasury bill rejection. Here is the central point, perhaps a seminal event in the progress with respect to the global financial reset. An action done by angry Asian producers. We might be witnessing a pretext in action to cover for the rejection of the US dollar, the refusal to accept US Treasury bills at ports in return for cargo delivery. At risk is the stoppage of all goods shipped from Asia to the United States. The stakes have risen. The Asians are out of patience. The damage multiplies each month. They might be fed up with the toilet paper spewed by the US government and US Fed, a money laundering duo. We might be seeing a trade war salvo of high order, this round led by Asia, directly at the US economy, forcing the reset that Washington and Wall Street refused to permit, refused to initiate. The American retailers and other clients who order the Asian ships loaded with cargo typically pay with US Treasury bills. The Asians might be finally calling an end to payment in US dollar terms, rendering African toilet paper by QE and the massive hemorrhage of $1 trillion of US governmental debt. Hyper-monetary inflation has stern, nasty consequences. The US trade deficit is a whopping $500 billion per year, which is financed by debt during a time of suspected debt default and full debt monetization. The red flag could be telling us that the reset is here. The urgent call would be a stock up on the essential supplies and to buy physical gold and silver, then to hold it. Without any hesitation or equivocation, the hang-up at ports implies something particularly foreboding about the state of the global finance. The DIP financing step has been short-circuited. It smells like a coordinated operation is being carried out by the Team Asia, the Hangjing sacrificial lamb, albeit a very big lamb. Furthermore, more stench with signals. The goods carried as cargo have nothing to do with the troubles of the transportation company. They are separate. The suspicion is that the producers who load the ships with cargo from actual work are interested in higher quality payments, no longer finding the US Treasury bill acceptable as payment. The US government officials would put a new blackout on the US dollar rejection. The real physical goods are there. Look beyond the stated news. It is in the payment in the US dollar terms which is the problem. The DIP financing should be an easy issue to overcome. Such financing is a standard operating system and has been for more than 50 years. With each passing month that QE wrecks the financial platforms and undermines capital structures, the payment in US dollar terms is more assuredly to be refused. We might soon hear about payment in kind for the cargo, as in the form of any commodity or finished good being requested. Perhaps demands for barter or hard assets, such as commodity swaps, will be part of trade payment, a concept cited by The Voice on countless occasions in the past year or two. This could be accomplished with copper plates, iron ore, cement, oil and gas, even credits towards commercial building purchase, port facility purchase, bridge and toll road purchase, even more. Gold trade note in introduction. The gold trade notes for trade payment might be coming into view, initially with commodity transfers, later swap contracts, and finally gold-backed short-term notes, which supplement the US Treasury bill. One might think of used newspapers on the floor. or of the dodo bird. The trade might be made in exchange for either goods delivered or US Treasury bills held. Detect a growing connection to finished goods being withheld from delivery. This is probably another sign of refusal of US Treasury bills as payment. A footnote: be sure to know that the preliminary steps to a global currency reset will not be laid out in full disclosure for public benefit. It represents a tremendous investment opportunity for the elite, which they never tend to share. In fact, the reset might be well along before it is even recognised. End to Euroraj main thoughts and open analysis, for which much gratitude is given. The Jackass believes a few critical elements to the reset are in place. More details of DIP financing feature is included in the September Hattrick Letter report. A major hitch obstacle can be inferred. Payment in US dollar terms might be the clot in the artery. Demand might be for hard asset swaps and a contract security from large-scale commitment of commodities, facilities and property. The swap trade is coming into view, a presage of the globe trade note. The Jackass concludes the US dollar rejection could be lifting its head within the gathering storm. Without clear identification, it is indeed difficult to identify all the elements when hidden deals at the highest level are underway, and friction is omnipresent. The Bobcat Corp rejected the US Treasury bills at Pacific ports is a clear story. For every one story recounted, there are 10 or 20 not yet heard. My firm belief is that an Asian banking system, they do not want the US Treasury bill anymore. The banks in Asia are trying to dump them in heavy volume, not accumulate more worthless toilet paper. Finally, the sharp backflow from the printing QE money has hit. The US Fed monetary policy saves the big insolvent banks, but kills capital. The result has finally seen manifested in the US global rejection, or at least hints towards the same. Asian banks still hold vast sums of US Treasury bills. They are not going to announce the rejection, but instead fight behind the walls for better terms of payment, even as they pursue the gold trade note for payment at ports. It is coming, like daybreak follows the long night. And that's where he leaves it. So guys, please do feel free to leave your comments, like this, share this, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks a lot.